back on the Grace Curley Show. My name is Mike Crawford. We're trying to get an attorney on the phone, Shannon McMahon. I think she's having some issues getting through. If you're listening, call in. Definitely call in right now, Shannon, if you can. I think we're having some issues communicating on the instant messenger, unfortunately. I don't know what's up with Facebook Messenger. They don't let the phone numbers go through, so she may have an issue there. Hopefully she calls in. Maybe she'll just call in on the regular listener line, 844-500-4242. I wanted to talk about a Bristol County district attorney, prosecutor, who is now facing suspension over misconduct. This happened back in 2003. A 17-year-old Asian American teenager, Frances Choi, was accused of killing her parents in a house fire in Brockton in 2003. This prosecutor, O'Sullivan, and her then Plymouth County district attorney, they were found to have exchanged racially explicit emails and failed to release important evidence in the case against Frances Choi. I'm quoting this outlet, Fall River Reporter, on the story. And our potential guest, Shannon McMahon, she did run for district attorney against the current DA, and we were hoping to talk to her about that, but I think we're having some communication issues, unfortunately. It's more my bad than hers, but maybe we'll get her on the next break. We also have some other things going on with Kelsey Fitzsimmons. There was an SJC filing about, this is a police officer in North Andover who had shot a police officer. She had been shot by another police officer in North Andover, and the judge decided to revoke her bail because after being shot, she couldn't breathe into the drug testing, alcohol testing tube, and it's caused some issues for her, unfortunately. And so there's a hearing coming up on October 7th, on Tuesday at 9 a.m., Salem Superior. I'm going to be there. I hope other folks also show up, Essex Superior Court on Tuesday. But they just filed an SJC hearing for her, and it's very interesting. We may quote that later on in the show. But we have attorney Shannon McMahon. We did get that worked out. Thank you so much to my producer, Taylor, for getting that to work. Attorney Shannon McMahon, how you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Thank you for sticking with us here. We just mentioned the Bristol County District Attorney prosecutors is facing a suspension over misconduct in 2003 related to the prosecution of Frances Choi. Her parents died in a house fire in Brockton. What can you tell us about this, and what do you think since you ran for district attorney in this county?
Well, I mean, just for a little backdrop, right? There was a fire April 17th, 2003. Two parents were killed. Kenny and Miss Choi, Frances Choi, were both charged with the arson and the murder. Frances Choi was eventually convicted after two mistrials of 2 counts of murder and arson. She did do 17 years in prison. What's important to note about this is that there's two issues, right? So the BBO the Board of Bar Overseers, had just issued a recommendation for a 2-year suspension for one of the prosecutors, Karen O'Sullivan. Karen O'Sullivan was a prosecutor at the Plymouth County DA's office starting back in 1997. She was one of the prosecutors in this. The issue was her and her co-counsel had essentially been mocking Frances Choi, her ethnicity, through some very racially charged emails that were sent to each other, and they're grotesque emails. They're absolutely grotesque. They were sent during work hours, by the way, throughout this entire process. None of that came out during the trial, obviously. And so on appeal, it had come out, and the conviction was overturned. One of the reasons for those emails that Karen O'Sullivan had been involved in. Sorry, I'm getting with Romano, so forgive the cough and the
You're
scratchy
fine.
voice. So the other part of it is not, I know that the glamour of it is the racially charged emails, which is deplorable. However, there's the other aspect of it, which was withholding Brady information. And obviously, I know you've been following the Karen Reed trial, and in other trials where Brady violations seem to be the status quo here in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem familiar? Like, I think that's what's great about Karen
it's
Reed.
eerily familiar.
Yeah, it's what's so great about the Karen Reed case is it exposed these issues to people who maybe weren't aware that innocent people have bad things that happen to them in court where it's not fair, where evidence is withheld. And that's what happened here too, right?
Absolutely. And Mike, I blame mainstream media. I truly, truly do. And you and I have had this conversation back when I was running for district attorney. Mainstream media does not cover this stuff. Had Aiden not covered the Karen Reed trial, where would we be? Had you not covered the Karen Reed trial, where would we be? There are so many of these stories, which is why I think the Karen Reed trial resonated so profoundly with so many people, because it happens so often. It's ridiculous. In this particular Choi case, Frances Choi was served 17 years in prison for a crime that she didn't commit. And the information that was withheld was that the other person who was charged, who did get immunity for his testimony against Frances charged, had told, strike that, his name, Kenny Choi, had, Jimmy Choi, who was murdered, had called the Brockton police about his grandson, Kenny Choi, and had told them that he was a runaway and dealing drugs. He clearly had a motive and an incentive to lie and point the finger at Frances. None of that was disclosed. It was never disclosed to the defense attorney. And the shocking part, reviewing the BBO's decision on this, was I think that was where they were so hung up, and why Karen O'Sullivan got 2 years suspension, because of what they dubbed, she didn't seem to think it was a big deal because she wasn't, quote, the lead prosecutor. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not. Ethics are what they are. A prosecutor has an absolute obligation to turn over information. And this is one of the reasons I ran against Tom Quinn. I don't believe he believes that. I think he believes in winning at all costs. Tom Quinn did make Karen O'Sullivan his first assistant, and he knew about this.
Wow, so she was like a top chief. She wasn't just a low level. She was high up there.
She was first assistant.
Wow.
Yeah, she's the first assistant.
She's top besides him.
Which means that she makes decisions. Yeah, she makes decisions about who's going to get charged with what. And that's a huge problem. When you've got the BBO quoting things that say that her testimony was not credible, she did not appear truthful, she did not understand or respect the seriousness of those emails, misconduct throughout the hearings. Dennis Collins, who's the head of the homicide unit here in Bristol County, he was quoted in the BBO's recommendation, as well as Attorney O'Sullivan, for contacting other people from the Plymouth County DA's office before these hearings and essentially trying to persuade them to testify in her favor. All of those things are just bad. You never want to have these things out there like that, and it shouldn't have ever happened. And Tom Quinn knew about it, never ever told anybody about it. You've got to question how many cases were decided to be prosecuted or not be prosecuted when there's clearly evidence of at least some bias and some motivation that is not based in truth or justice.
Shocking, but not surprising. Unfortunately, this does go on. O'Sullivan, did you know her? Did you know her before this?
Yes.
You were aware of her? What?
Yes, I worked.
Were you surprised that she did this?
I'll be frank with you, Mike. I worked with Karen. I was shocked. I was inherently shocked. And again, the emails speak for themselves. The I'm basing everything I know based on the BBO's decision, which I reviewed. Fall River Reporter had covered it as well. A few other sites had covered it. But I went right to the BBO's decision. I just don't see how you get around it. I don't see how there's another side to it.
Yeah.
But yes, I was inherently shocked. Everything I knew about Karen, she's an excellent litigator. She was a great lawyer. But yes, it was shocking. And again, I put the blame on right where it should be, with the DA, with the person who made her our supervisor, our superior. Therefore, it's a poison that runs all the way through. I don't think that, you've seen it with the Anthony Harding case, right? We've talked about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that after the break, if we can. We have a couple seconds left. I want to ask you two quick questions, combine them here, and then we'll talk more about Anthony Harding after the break here. The question I have. This woman got 17 years for something that she didn't do. The prosecutor gets suspended for 2 years. I feel like a lot of cases are going to be challenged. Do you feel like cases will be challenged, other cases? And is 2 years fair considering someone got 17 years in jail? I feel like they should suspend her for 17 years. What do you think?
I think that, I agree with you. I think that disbarment is probably appropriate at this point. We'll see what happens with the SJC, because this is going to go in front of the SJC to rule on the recommendation from the BBO, and Attorney O'Sullivan will have an opportunity to appeal that decision. I'm curious to see how that appeal will go. I'll certainly be following it. But based off what I've read from the BBO's recommendation, I think it's a really big uphill battle for her.
Phenomenal. We're talking to Attorney Shannon McMahon, excuse me. She ran for district attorney in Bristol County. We're going to talk about some other cases in Bristol County, some other issues with the DA there. After the break, I want to thank Attorney Shannon McMahon for being here. This is Mike Crawford, Grace Curley Show. We'll be back in a few.
This is the Grace Curley Show.
Welcome back. Happy Friday, everyone. Grace Curley Show. This is Mike Crawford filling in for Grace Curley. Having a great Friday. Have some great guests. We got Attorney Shannon McMahon here. We're going to talk about some more things that are going on in Bristol County. I also want to recognize the Rumble Rats, the folks watching on Rumble. I'm watching you watch me on Rumble. I want to thank all the people on Rumble and Facebook watching us, as well as all the people listening at home and the text line. Appreciate all the text today. Really do love the feedback. 844-500-4242 is the phone number, or you can send a text at 617-213-1066. Shannon, I know you wanted to talk about Anthony Harding. You mentioned that earlier. What's going on with that? Tell the people about that don't know about the situation with Anthony Harding, who was killed by the police.
Yeah, so Anthony Harding was a young man who was on a house arrest issue. Due to COVID, it had extended for a long period of time. The police had gone there to execute a warrant, and within 3 minutes, they had shot and killed him. There was two kind of rookie officers who were involved in the shooting. Eric Mack, who's a local attorney. Anthony Harding is his brother. It was something that was a big part of the campaign when I ran against Attorney Quinn. I'm not going to get into too much of the details of what's going on with the underlying case for, out of respect for the process and the judicial system. But essentially, District Attorney Quinn had a very, very, very close relationship with one of the officers involved in the shooting. He was like a son to him. He had basically put him through school. He was Tom Quinn's son's best friend since they were in kindergarten, family vacations and so forth. Attorney Quinn never disclosed that. He conducted the investigation within a very short period of time and found no wrongdoing on the part of the police. Now, I'm certainly not going to say what happened that night, but I do know that when you have things like that and motivations to lie from an elected official without being disclosed, this is what we get into with the kind of what we see with the Karen Reid, the Michael Morrissey thing. You can't have these things. You have to have a disclosure. It's the burden of being a prosecutor. There's a reason that the BBO has established rules that are different for prosecutors than there are for other lawyers, because it is such a powerful position. You are in the seat to make a decision about whether or not someone gets charged with a crime. And that's a huge, huge weight. It's a heavy burden as the crown. But when you don't have faith in our elected officials because they hide their biases or their motivations, then justice can never happen. Yeah. And I'll go back to it, Mike, when you don't have people talking about it, when you don't have news or media outlets covering any of this, then it just goes by the wayside and it becomes the status quo. And I think you could see that with the massive coverage of Karen Reid. That kind of behavior certainly didn't just start, right? I think we can all agree with that. That was a system that was corrupt for years because it was allowed to be. And we have the same thing here in Bristol County. Those kinds of things, doing your buddy a favor, blind eye, turn the other cheek, these things happen all the time. People don't think of corruption, strike that. People think of corruption as being, kind of like a mafia thing. It all happens behind closed doors. That's not the reality. The reality is I'm going to do my buddy a favor.
That's mostly what it is. That's a lot of times what it is. I owe you a favor because you did me a favor back in the day too. And a lot of those conflicts, and it's just the appearance of it, whether or not it's actually a conflict or not. It should be disclosed so that you can kind of address it and move on. But so many times these public officials don't do that, and that's what we're seeing. I think that's why Karen Reid was why it got so much support from the audience, because so many people in the audience have seen that happen in their local town and their local state. Like you said, it happens in Bristol County, it happens in Norfolk County. We're looking at some stuff right now in Essex County, where I'm from. So it happens a lot, more than people think. And I think that's why so much interest in Karen Reid is because it was so obvious what was going on here. There was a lot of conflict of interest that weren't noted right from the start.
Exactly. And it's ironic because the BBO panel, in their decision on the Karen O'Sullivan matter, did quote in saying, in considering this matter as a whole, we were mainly struck by how serious the respondents' misconduct undermined the integrity and reputation of prosecutors in the Commonwealth. We cannot minimize the harm to the integrity of our legal system and the administration of justice when the motivations and biases of prosecutors become news. Now, that only happens if it makes the news.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for being here today. This is Shannon McMahon, attorney. Follow her. She's on social media. I want to thank you so much, attorney Shannon McMahon. This is Mike Crawford, Grace Curley Show.